my screen again. So welcome. The 10 people you'll meet every day. We're going to have a game of bingo. I hope you all know how to play bingo, because we're going to, as we go through them, I want you to see if we can get a full house. So points will be provided for full houses. So I'll ask you that at the end. So I'm not going to do that, introduce us all to each other. We can see who we are. If you can have your mics and your cameras on, that would be great, because I'm going to ask questions and it's interactive. If you can't, don't worry about it, but use the chat function and we'll get to know each other as we go and we start those questions. If you don't know anything about me, author of 2 Change Ninja books. The first book is based in the workplace and it's how to navigate change when you are faced with all of these people in your life that I'm going to talk about today, how to ninja them so that you can get them on board. There's a course that goes with it if you want to know more about the tools I'm going to mention today. Change Ninja Returns is more about the change that impacts directly on us. It's all right leading change when we know all about it and other people are afraid of it, but what about when the change might be negative to us or we're having an emotional response? So it's all about managing yourself through those changes that are big and a little bit scary. And again, there is a course to go with that, so please do holler if you are remotely interested. That's enough about me. I always start my sessions with something called hopes and fears. Some of you may know this. You've given up 45 minutes of your valuable time. So what do you want from today? If you can go skipping down your corridor or out of your room at the end of this 45 minutes, what will I have done? And anything you don't want me to do or anything you're worried about. So just have a few seconds thinking about what your biggest hope for today is and any fears that you might have. And then I'm just going to ask you to shout them out. So when we're ready, I'm going to say fears first. Let's capture any fears if you got. Is there anything you don't want me to do or anything you're worried about?
I'll start off, Tammy. I'm just worried that I might know this already. That's my fear. Obviously, I don't know anything, but that I'm familiar with this already.
Okay, so learn nothing new.
Yeah.
Any other fears? Everyone cool with role playing? I'm not going to role play. You don't need to worry. We have no fears. This is great. You're all just here with no fears. Brilliant. What hopes have we got? What do you want to get out of today? 40 minutes. What do you want to go away with?
Learn something new.
Something new. Yep. I know, right. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Hopefully I am. But you don't just shout them out. You don't need to put your hand up.
Yeah. Learn something new. Same.
Yep. Anyone else?
I want to be inspired by this session, Tammy. It's ambitious.
Learn how to manage change.
How to manage change.
I
Anything
want to
else?
learn about some new techniques about how to change people's thinking.
Okay, brilliant. So we only fear that we raise was that we learn nothing new. Does everybody know hopes and fears as a tool? Tarsem, do you know it already?
No.
Okay, so instead of having an agenda that I sent out that I told you what I thought today was about, I've asked you what you want to do to be as about. So I've said, what are your fears? What are you sitting worried about or you don't want me to do that you might worry about? And we've got rid of it instantly because the only fear you have is to learn nothing new. And I'm teaching you hopes and fears. So if the next 40 minutes are really bad, you've still got this tool to use. In terms of the hopes, I'm hopefully going to help you understand how to manage change, some new techniques for people that will inspire you and teach you something new. So you as a collective have formed today's agenda. If today's meeting, session, whatever it is absolutely rubbish, is it your fault or my fault?
Ours.
It's your fault because you came up with it.
The collective.
It's a collective agenda. So it's aligned us. We've all agreed what we want out of the next 40 minutes. We've turned them into an agenda and I'm now going to help deliver that. So I also have a hope that you will interact. You're already doing that. So that is coming true. So this is your first, I will do this at the start of anything. If you come to all these sessions, you'll do this every week, every fortnight, sorry. Because if we can get rid of the fears that people have, and they start to feel comfortable telling you what they're worried about in a meeting, guess what? They'll start to tell you about things that you need to know about rather than sitting on them. And you get rid of them collectively. It forms that psychological safe space that we all talk about. If you then get everybody's hopes and turn them into an agenda, guess what? Everybody's interested in what you're doing because it's their agenda and not your agenda. So collectively, you've aligned around why are we all gathered today and what is it we need to do today to move things forward. Instead of a pre-formed agenda, do a hopes and fears. It might feel a bit weird the first time you do it. People will soon get used to it. If you think nobody's going to come up with some fears in the first session you do, have some of your own. My fear is that you won't engage with this new tool I'm trying out. My fear is that you won't share things that you're worried about because you think you might get into trouble or that something would go wrong. People will soon start to trust the process and start to share the things that they're worried about, and you can get rid of them. If you go to a meeting and you're worried about something, guess what? You're not paying any attention to the meeting. You're just wasting your time because all you're doing is thinking about the thing you're worried about. So it gets rid of that and allows people to properly engage. So we've got rid of that fear instantly. Hassam, I'd like to hear you using hopes and fears the next time you have a meeting and feeding back how it goes. So let's move on with the session then, and I will hopefully deliver your agenda. So change can be really challenging, whether it's personal or work. It can feel like we're banging our head against a wall, treading through treacle, everything's incredibly slowly, feel like we're getting pummeled from all sides by people and objections and things that are going wrong. There's science behind this. If you want to know more about this, it was in the first forum, so check out the video. We'll send you the link to that. But the reason is to do with the evolved brain. And our brains, all of our brains have evolved to fear change. You might think you like change. You probably do like some change, the change that you know is going to end up good and a good outcome for you. But the brain has evolved to dislike and distrust change because if it doesn't know what's going to happen next, it could be dangerous, and danger could mean death. So our brains have evolved to distrust and dislike change, and that's where most of our challenges come from, particularly in the workplace. It's a subconscious thing that the brain's doing and say no to this, it could be dangerous. Again, if you want to know more about the neuroscience of that, check out last session's video. So our real challenge, and I was chatting at the start to Dan around this, is when process gets in the way and people get in the way and all of that. 99% of the time, the challenges you face are based on people. In the organization, we have these organizational charts, and it's full of people at different levels with different skill sets, different teams, different organizations. And this is what's getting in the way of your successful change. Why is that? Because one, we've got the evolved brain that fears change. So a lot of people are subconsciously thinking, this might not be good for me. I'm not going to engage in it. Secondly, you've got your ideas, your projects for a solution to an issue. They've got their own ideas. So you need to persuade them, even if they think this is a good change, if they've got their own ideas, you need to make sure that you understand what that is and get them onto your idea. And that's really challenging because we've all had projects that other people are doing and we think, why are they doing it that way? It'll never work. They should do it this way. Everyone in your organization is having some thought around your project, whether it's fear of or they've got a better solution to it. There'll be a handful that think your project's great. They're your pals. You don't need to worry about them. They're already on board. It's the rest of them. The challenges you face and when the process and the system gets in the way is because the system sits on top of this structure. And it's really, really easy. If you've subconsciously decided this could be bad for you, to find something within the system and structure to say no. Find a policy, find an IT reason, find a business case, or there'll be something that you can find that says we can't do this. So when somebody says we can't do that because they're using the system to hide behind, because there's always a way around those things. That very few reasons exist that can actually block what you're doing. There'll still be a workaround. So NHS, I used to work in the health service. It was always, there's a risk to patients. And it would be something like 10 people away from going anywhere near a patient. But people bring up the risk of that because it's the health service. It's a very risk-averse process. And it just goes back to all of the change. What if? There's always solutions and workarounds. People use the system to hide behind it because it's a protection. So don't think it's the system that needs to change. It's the people. And actually it's us and how we approach people. But that's where most of your change blockers will come from, is that's what's going on. It's the brains that are doing a lot of that thinking, and the system is just the safety net for people. So I have decided that there are 10 types of people you'll meet, and I'm going to tell you what you need to do with them. You ready to play Ninja Bingo? Brilliant. So, and if you get this person, shout out bingo, and we'll do a full house at the end. So first is within your immediate circle, and I call these dementors. And I'm saying your immediate circle because they're probably people you really like. They might be your best pal, family members. But do you ever have a difficult issue and you just want to talk about it, and you talk about it with your best pal or with your mum or your sister, and they start telling you what you should do, and it just makes you feel a bit rubbish because you're not looking for advice. You just want to be in output mode and to be coached. So think about scenarios where you need a specific level of support, and you go to the person who should support you and they don't. They make you feel worse. And they make you feel worse because there's somebody very close to you, and there's somebody you respect, and there's somebody you like. So dementors are, if you don't know dementors, they're from Harry Potter. They're people who just suck that life out of you, and you just wither away a little bit. You just lose the will to live almost. So think about the people in your immediate support network, home and work, and think about what is that when I really need support. What do I need, and who is the best person to go to? So it might not be your best pal for a certain thing because they're going to advise you what to do, and you might not need advice. Or you might need specific advice, and this person you wouldn't normally go to, but they can provide. So think about who's going to give me the wrong support just now. And it's natural to go to them because they're in my close support network, but they're not actually going to help in this scenario. It can really, really help you move forward. Because if somebody starts telling you what you should do and you trust them, you'll listen to them, and it might not be the right thing. So unless you're looking for advice, don't go to that person. So that's number one, dementors. We all have them. And you might have some actual dementors at work, but we're going to come to those next. Number two is your wing people. So it's probably the same circle of people. The dementors and the wing people that are really there to support you. There could be close work colleagues. They're the same people because they'll give you the right support that you need. So when I went through a big, massive change, I turned to my best pal, and she actually made me feel terrible because she was giving me advice, and I just wanted her to coach me so that I could work out for myself what I wanted to do next. And when I asked her to do that, she got a bit umpy with me because she thought she was helping, but I actually didn't want support. I didn't want to be told what to do. I wanted someone to get me to work out what I wanted to do for myself. Ironically, she is a coach professionally. But so work out, what do I need? Who are my people? What do I want from each of those people? So when you really need that support, who am I going to go to specifically for that type of support? And this is, if you can nail this, then you've got that back in all along. So if things are going really, really badly at work and you're really struggling, you're not going to turn to the wrong person to help you in your personal life. You're going to go, right, what do I actually need help with right now? And who's the best person to give me that? It doesn't mean that demented person's a bad person. It's just they're the wrong person for that situation. Does that make sense? And has anyone got any questions? Because I think we don't get taught this, and we just lean on the people that are there for us, and they are there for us, but it's not necessarily the right person for that situation. Any questions? Does it make sense? Okay, so they're your first two. Once you've got this, you've got that really strong network behind you, you can move into the next round of people. Before we do, yeah.
Is this in any particular order, or is it just randomly 10 people?
It's sort of random, but I've grouped them. So the first two groups are just your immediate network.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what the next group is in a minute. How does it feel to be wrong? Before we move on, what does being wrong feel like? What does it feel like to be wrong?
Not great.
Not great. Anyone else?
Surprising.
Surprising. So it's a trick question. What it feels like to be wrong is exactly what it feels like to be right. It only feels bad when you know you're wrong. So think about this with all the people at work that you think, why are you doing that? It's a completely wrong way to do it. Guess what? They probably don't know it's wrong, so it feels like the same as being right. So it's really important, because you have data and because you know something's wrong, don't assume the other person does. What you don't want to do is go up and tell them the data of why they're wrong, because they'll just bristle and they'll dig the heels in. But knowing someone is wrong, and you're wondering how are they going along and making these decisions when it's completely wrong? They don't know, and it feels exactly the same as being right. So it's only when you know something's wrong, and a lot of people will dig their heels in when they find out they're wrong if it's done in the wrong way. So just have that in the back of your mind when you're dealing with this next group. This next group are people that you will have in your life that you need to help in terms of decision making at work. So number one, the big cheese or the boss, chief executive or your boss. We all have these, different levels, but we all have these. And they have certain characteristics. They kind of like a bit of power. Anybody who's in charge of stuff likes a bit of power, good or bad. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but they might use it in a good or bad way. They will make decisions based on what they think is correct because it feels right. It doesn't mean it is correct, but telling your big boss, telling the big cheese or your boss that they're wrong is not going to work. So know that they're making decisions based on what they think is right, even if you know it's wrong. And often their bark can be worse than their bite because they have to maintain that sort of exterior demeanor. So how well do you understand them and their thinking? You need to get inside them and understand what triggers them, how they work. You also need to remember they're human. Quite often people say to me about what they think their boss should do. They forget that their boss is human. Their boss is going through the same change. If there's a big restructure, their boss might be out of a job. We forget and we expect them to do certain things for us, and we forget to do it up the way. So understand what triggers them, what makes them angry, what makes them make wrong decisions, what makes them shut down and react badly, and all of that stuff. And then do things for them and remind them that you've done it. If your boss says, can you do this by Friday? Do it by Thursday. Say, you said you wanted it by Friday. Here it is on Thursday. And then the next time they ask you to do something, do that again and say, remember last time you wanted it by Friday? I did it by Thursday. You wanted this by Wednesday? I've done it by Tuesday. When you do that 3 or 4 times, always remind people that you've already done the stuff. It builds trust. It builds trust in the brain. I don't just mean in a conscious level, in a subconscious level. So they'll start to trust that what they've asked you to do, you'll get done without chasing your tail. And that means you can sit back and get on and do stuff without triggering them a bit and all of that. But understand, try and get inside their brain. What makes them tick? Understand them, because you can't change them. But you can work with them in a way that works well for them. And remember, if they're making decisions, they think it's the right decision. If you know it's wrong, understand them so you can approach them individually, specifically in a way that will help them and help to shift their thinking. So blind trust to build the trust. There's a tool called Future Familiar. It's in the books and it's also on my webpage. So if you want some of these tools, check out my webpage for blogs and things to that, which to learn that or pick up a copy of the book. Make things for you, but really understand what makes them tick. And we also talk about managing up the way. This is definitely a person that you need to manage up the way. And they'll all be different. So I can't tell specifically. They'll have specific triggers. So understand them. Number 4, mini cheddars. These are the decision makers in the organization who want to be the big cheese. They'll never be the big cheese. They're rubbish. They've got cheesy chips on their shoulder. They've got egos way, way bigger than they're ever going to get up the chain. And although they're decision makers, they will do everything possible to avoid making decisions because it could go badly wrong and end their career. So they avoid decision making. Fine. So these people, you need to get them on board. If you can find a way to get them to think that your idea for this change is their idea, they're much more likely to make a decision about it and advocate it. So you need to find a way to understand their issue and get them to come up with the solution that you've come up with in a way that they think it's their idea. And there is ways to do that. Again, you can use Future Familiar. There's a tool called Sliced Bread where you really explore what they might think about your idea so you can pitch it to them in a way that they'll understand it. In a way that will they'll see it as meeting a need that they have. So rather than saying we're going to do X, you work out what their issue is, what they might say about your solution, and then describe it in a way that they would describe themselves. Because if you're going to meet a real need they have, they'll get behind it, they'll get on board, and they might make that decision. So rather than sitting not making decisions and ignoring your thing and moving things forward, they'll want to move it forward because it's their idea. So find ways to make them think your idea is their idea. You might need a shower after it. You might feel really rubbish because you're giving away this great idea, and this person who never makes a decision is going to own it and take it and get all the credit. But if it's a good thing for the organization, so be it. You'll know what you've done. Number 5, find a mentor. You may have mentors. If anyone knows Eddie Obeng, this is a drawing of him. So Eddie is my mentor, teacher, all of that. Find mentors, one or more. They will teach you things you don't know. They will know so many things you don't know. They'll teach you new ways. Always be open to listening to them. Don't sit in a meeting with them, tell them what you've done and how you've done it wrong. Ask them questions so you can learn from them, and get them to ask you coaching questions so you'll get your own insights. You cannot, no one can change you. You can only change yourself. And the best way to do that is to get insights to things. So open questions to them to learn things you don't know. And again, like the wing people and the dementors, you might have more than one mentor for different things. So don't assume one mentor can do everything, although Eddie probably can. If you know him, you probably can. So find one or more, use them wisely. They're short on time. Loads of people want them. So make sure you're prepared if you're going to have a meeting with them, all of the questions you've got, and keep learning from everything they tell you. If you can't get access to a mentor or you need to do some learning in the moment, there's a tool called Action Replay. Always learn on a daily basis. And especially learn when something's gone well. You've done the big board presentation, you've stood up in front of a bunch of people on a training program, you've designed something, and you think that's gone amazingly well. And you come out and you feel all great. That is the time to learn. What did you plan to do that worked well so you can make sure you repeat it? What did you plan to do that didn't work well? It can be the tiniest of things, but you want to make sure you don't do them in the future. You can always be better. What went well that you hadn't planned? Because that's the serendipity stuff. I can't believe that happened. It was amazing. If you just come out and say that, you'll forget it. If you do the Action Replay, you'll come up with a way of building that into your future activities. So don't just do the learning when things go wrong and do a wash up. Do the learning when things go really well, because there'll be some absolutely golden nuggets in there that just happened by chance and you'll lose them. You can always be better. If I ever do a presentation, Eddie will ask me after this, because he always does, how did the session go? He says, I don't want to know what's gone well. What didn't go well? What did you learn from it? How would you change it if you did it again? And it's the tiniest little of nuggets that will make you brilliant. You can always be better. So that's the people around you that you don't necessarily have choice around. Obviously, you can choose your mentors, but the people in your life that will help you make those decisions if you know how to tackle and deal with each one. So understand those people quite well. Get to know what makes them tick and how you can get the most from them. So stakeholders, like the general masses of people that we need on board with our change. First question, do they understand what you're trying to do? Do they really understand your project or your change piece? Yes or no? And do they agree with you? Yes or no? Quite often we do stakeholder maps by importance and influence and send out communications and come up with engagement plans, and we just treat them all the same. If I understand what you're trying to do and I disagree, you need to find out why I'm disagreeing. If I say, yeah, this is a great project, but you know I don't understand it, you need to make sure I understand the implications for me, because otherwise I'm going to disappear at some point. If I don't agree and I don't understand, you need to educate me to see if I then still disagree with you, but at least I'm doing it from a place of understanding. Don't treat them all the same. Don't treat them based on how important or influential they are. Treat them based on whether they're understanding and whether they're agreeing. And come up with a plan for each of those individuals or groups of people. Again, there's some tools there which I'll cover a little bit more as we go through. So first one, gym. Has anyone got a gym? It's that person who's been around for a while, feet up on the table. Oh, we've done that, it never works. quite sloped shoulders, probably comes up with inappropriate jokes or statements and laughs at their own bad jokes. Does anyone know a Jim? They're everywhere. So Jim means well, but he's been around. He's not that interested in being. He walks slowly. He's not interested in speed. So old school, inappropriate. Might wink at you a lot, but he sticks to his guns. So when he's agreed something, or when he's decided something is right or wrong, it's really hard to shift him. So you need to make sure he thinks your thing is right. Jim could be a really, really good advocate because he sticks to his guns. So if you can convince him that your thing is the thing, he will advocate it for you. He's really easily flattered, so that's easy to warm him up. You just need to understand what motivates him. What's the thing that he's going to listen to you? It might be the football, it might be a bad dad joke, whatever it is. Just have a general understanding about him so you can start that familiar conversation. He doesn't like over formality. He'll come on board with your project. 5 Ps is a good one. He's likely to agree with you, but he might not necessarily understand. So just make sure you go through the project or the change and what you might need to do with it. And then you're much more likely to get him on board and sell in your project for you. The more you can get other people to sell your change, the better. So make sure you really can sort of have that informal conversation in a way that's going to suit him, flatter him, and then he'll be on board. Jim's quite easy. You just might need to put up with the inappropriate jokes. Number 7, Mayor. Mayor's probably quite a career orientated, struggled quite a bit, and is quite officious. This is just a persona. Just like Jim, it's this persona to protect. We all have different layers, and it's just that persona. So she's not unlike Jim. It's just from a different angle. She might point a finger a lot. She might tell people what to do. Some people just tell people what to do in a very officious way, and they go off and do it because that's what works for them. So we all have those people. They quite often work in policy and governance. Again, could be a really good advocate and will have your back if she agrees with what you're doing. She's probably much more career focused, aspirational. So find out what it is that career focused aspirations are. If your project could really help her and make her look good, guess what? She's going to support it more. So find out a little bit about that. This is all about finding out about people so you can get them on board early. The great thing is if you can get someone like this on board with your project, they will manage the difficult people because they're good at doing that. So again, a bit like the Demented and the Wing people, what might they be good for in your project? Get them on board and give them a role where they can really support it in a way that you need. This person's probably likely to understand what you're trying to do because they're quite smart, they're career focused, they work on things, they understand things. They might not agree. So there's a great tool and it is on the website called IDQB and it gets Turkey's vote for Christmas. So share with them the issue that exists for why this change is needed. Explain all the data, no opinions or beliefs, or just the data. What do we know? What are the facts? And then create a question for them that's very specific to either what you can do or what you want them to do. And you build a solution together. Absolutely works every time. You can get pretty much anyone on board with your change if you follow this process. It's really hard to do. Quite simple, it's hard to do, so it really needs practice. I always suggest practicing at home with the kids or with hubby. If you want, if you want the dishwasher loaded in a different way, use IDQB because it absolutely works and you'll get instant results. So they probably understand, but they don't necessarily agree. And you need to find out why they disagree and build a solution around that. And then they'll become strong advocates. And you can use this person to really fight your corner. So now you've got Mayor and you've got Jim. You've got Jim doing all the softly, cuddly stuff with the inappropriate jokes, and you've got Mayor doing the sensible stuff behind the scenes and getting people on board and explaining to other people why this is an important change. We've then got the Steely Governance Manager who will, unless they think your idea is really amazing and going to support something that they want to do, find a reason to say no, be it policy, be it risk, be it health and safety. We've all met this person. Their old job is around saying no because they're there to protect the organization. So with these people, you know, they will avoid risk. They work in risk management, perhaps. They don't like, people who work in risk management don't like risk. They work in risk management. They will avoid going against the status quo, because the status quo works, and it works because we've got all of this policy and governance in place. They actively dislike change. This isn't just an evolutionary thing. They actively mostly dislike change. So how do we get around them? The change you're doing needs to be similar to something they know. I've talked about future familiar. So it's a bit like that project you did last year where you got a pay rise from it. It needs to feel like an improvement to what they do. It will make your life easier because it will do X, Y, and Z. So make it familiar. It's a bit like, but it does this and it works because. But those answers need to be in relation to the issue that they have. Because if they don't have an issue in this area that needs solving, they're going to find a reason to say no if they don't think it's a good thing. If they think it's going to be work for them that requires policy change and it's too risky and all of that, that's what they're there for. They are the gatekeepers. So make your change really familiar in a way that they think this is a really good thing to do and that they will support. And if it needs a policy change, that they will support that. These are the people that can really, really stop you doing anything. Number 9. This is an example of digital transformation. Someone who's in the organization to lead that big, foggy change. We're going to do all of these amazing things. They're going to bring in all the swanky stuff. There are two categories here. There's an A and a B, and yours. So you need to decide which one they are. Are they in it and doing this job because they really want to make a difference? Like they're absolutely behind this change and they're willing to try lots of new things to see what works? Or are they in it purely for the fame and fortune and don't really want to do anything different? They just want the badge, the CV that's going out there and telling everyone they're doing all this transformation stuff when actually they're just sticking in new servers in the server cupboard. You need to work out which one they are, because if they're in it to make a difference and you've got some cracking ideas, they're going to be behind you as long as you can share them in a way that they think will work. If they're in it for the fame and fortune and you come along with your cracking ideas to do some really good, interesting things, they're not going to be interested, because if it goes wrong, they're going to look bad. So the first one will try and test and do things in different ways to see what's going to work. The second one only wants the things they definitely know will work, and they're just going to do the sheeny stuff on the top. So you need to decide which one they are. Test them early, find a way. If they're good, how can you help them? And they'll ask you for ideas, because they're open to ideas, because they're in it for the right reasons. And that's when you share your ideas. If they're in it for bad, you need to work out how to get around them, and then treat them as one of those stakeholders who doesn't understand, doesn't agree, and how might you get around, still do your stuff by getting around them. Change types and leadership can be really good here, because if they're in to do this big stuff, then it's probably a foggy project when it's a bit unclear. And again, you can test them by asking them where they think if they think they can do a 3-year plan for digital transformation, they don't understand transformation. So you're kind of wasting your time. If they think it's a paint by numbers project where they can write down exactly what they're going to do and by when, it's not going to transform anything. So you can use some of that. And again, the tools are all in the book and on the website to really get a flavor for whether you think they're really up for this change or whether it's just for their own ego. I did this in NSS where Kirsty is, and I think the person's left, can't remember his name. But they brought in some big some big cheese to do digital transformation, got this amazing CV. I went to meet him and I decided to wear jeans, which today might not, this is about 10 years ago, wearing jeans into the office on a Tuesday. And he instantly, yes, so Tossum, he had that face that you just have. I instantly knew in that moment he had no desire to change anything, because he was assuming that I wasn't professional because I was wearing jeans in the office on a Tuesday. Friday would have been fine, but not a Tuesday. So that guy was wedded to process and following due process. And I'd stepped outside of that boundary just by wearing jeans. So things like that can really give you a sense of where someone is. For all the blah, 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 he had no desire and he didn't change anything. And I think he got the big heave-ho. He didn't do anything. But it looked good on his CV and he probably went off and got a bigger job somewhere else. So you need to, there's no point wasting time with people that aren't really in it to do the stuff. So you need to find a way around them. So test them out early and decide which one they are. And then there's the general blockers. These are the people who the change is going to impact and their brain has decided it's a bad thing. Because it's too much work, we like the way we do things, we don't know what it's going to lead to, am I going to lose my job? You know, people come along with AI projects. People aren't up for that because the brain doesn't understand it. So we really need to focus on helping them to understand what the real issue is. What is the issue? They might have it's probably because it's probably a knee-jerk reaction. They might have some history of something similar if you're going through a reorg or something like that, but they're hiding behind it. It's a knee-jerk reaction. They might have some bad history of it. So you need to be ninja with them. You need to share the ninja, and you need to do ninja. They probably don't even understand what the problem is. Why do we need to do that when there isn't really an issue? So getting them to understand what the core issue is that needs fixing. We have this issue in the organization of X. You know, we're running out of money. If we don't do something soon, the organization is going to go under. That's a real core problem that affects them. What will happen if we don't fix it? This is the gap leap. What will happen if we fix this gap that we have? It tells a story. Get them to tell the story. Why haven't we fixed it just yet? They'll come up with reasons why it's not fixed just yet. Take the biggest issue of why it's not been fixed yet. How do you think we can fix that? All of a sudden, they're much more engaged with it because it's a real issue that will affect them, and they'll come up with ideas, and they're much more likely to buy into the thing that you're doing. You know, if someone's coming along and replacing the entire email system, 90% of the organizations are going, why? Email works. Why do I have to change my email address and my system? We've all been there. And nobody ever tells you why you need to do it. So it becomes a dragged out program, and nobody wants to do the training, and nobody wants to do the switchover because nobody said why it's an issue. It just seems like a vanity thing. So make sure you really clarify the issue that needs fixing and why it's an issue. And that the solution is the email system. We often sell the project. We often sell the solution. We don't sell the problem. If people aren't bought into the problem, why would they buy into the solution? So this is your biggest, you know, all of the others are individual people that you need to deal with in different ways. This is your lion's share of the organization. If they don't think there's an issue and it's not going to affect them, why would they be up for your change? They're already busy people. So this is where Ninja really comes in. And the more you can get those other 9 people, or 7 people, not the demented knowing people, on board with this change, the easier it's going to be to then push this through the organization with the lion's share of people. So they are the 10 types of people. Did anyone get Full House? Helen, you got Full House. Were you like naming people as we went?
Over the course of my career, naming quite a few people for each one. Yes. And I think even people, you can be multiple personas as well. One person can demonstrate
absolutely
all of the above.
Absolutely. So that brings me on to the next bit. Remember, how does it feel to be wrong? It only feels bad when you know you're wrong. So who are you as a ninja? Did anyone say, was anyone asking, who am I in this? Thanks, Harvey. See you soon. Did anyone go in, which one am I, as you went through? Guess what? You're all of them. We're all of these people. This is why it's not specific about any individual per se. We can all be the big cheese decision maker, particularly at home. We can be the decision maker who stops the family holiday changing because it's too much effort for us. We can be the putting our feet up. It's not that important. Why are you worried about this? It's not that important. To the person who's worried about it, it's important. We can all be the person telling everyone else what to do, especially the kids. We can be the policy police. It's too risky to do that. We're not doing that because we can be the person who's meant to come up with the ideas, but we're really not bought into it. We can be the general blocker of change at home and at work. We can be the mentor, and we can be the dementer. We can suck the life out of other people. If someone comes along and they're struggling and you start saying, has anyone ever started a sentence, if I was you, this is what I would do? That is pure dementer, because they don't, unless they say, what would you do? And if they did, then you wouldn't start the sentence, if I was you. You're not them. You're not going through it. You have no idea what the emotional state is. So telling them what to do is not what they need. asking them coaching questions is probably what they need, because they just need to work it out for themselves. They're in an emotional state, not a logical state. Unless you're asked for advice in those situations, do not give it. So you can be all of those. There's only 9 personas there, because instead of being those 9 personas on there, you can be the wingman to all of those people. Those people that are coming to you for whatever it is, instead of being that persona, be their wing person. So you can be the ninja or the wing person, which brings me to my favorite smart joke. There are 10 types of people in the world. There's those that get binary and those that don't. I love this joke because it requires you to think, not everyone's going to get this instantly, and that's not a bad thing. But I love this joke. But essentially, it means there are only 2 types of people in the world, and there are. And you can choose to be a ninja those 10 characters, or you can choose, or when you're being one of those 9 characters, you can be the wingman. So ninja the others, wingman when you're starting to play those roles. And those are the 10 types of people you'll meet. If you want to know more, there's loads in there. Get in touch. There's courses. I've got discounts, things like that. I've got a Black Friday offer. But please drop me a line. And if you want to know more, and again, the stuff is on the website if you want access to those tools, if you don't have the book. Over to you. I want to know what your biggest surprise is and what you're going to do next. So I'll give you a minute to think about that. And then I'm just going to ask you all, what is your biggest surprise from today? And what will you do next with all of this information? So let's do a quick, I'm just going to bring up the list of people. And if I don't know if everyone's got the same list. Oh, it is alphabetical. So I'm just going to go through you first names first. Anurag, what's your biggest surprise or what next?
My biggest surprise is I have all these elements in me.
And that's the thing to remember, we're all those people some of the time.
Right. And my learning is, be self-aware and see how you come across to others.
Brilliant. Thank you. Barbara.
Yeah, thank you. My biggest surprise again as well, like, how much of each personality I bear sometimes. So yeah, so that's the surprise. I suppose my learning was kind of how I can be more aware of others displaying those personalities and adapt myself and kind of be agile in the way so we can work together better.
Brilliant. And the more you look at these tools and learn them and practice them, the more they'll come to you in the moment to allow you to be agile. So do practice the tools. And again, practice them on the kids, because if you get it wrong, it doesn't matter. You can just turn into Maya and tell them what to do. Christina. We don't have Christina. Gary, Dan. I remembered.
Well done. I suppose my surprise, even though it's obvious when you think about it, is that we are all these things, aren't we? I was waiting for you to say one of these 10 is the person that constantly talks about the changes that they wanted to happen ages ago, and then will never want to do your change because they said, I wanted that drop down thing changing and we didn't do that. But I guess that's probably your mini cheddar or your blocker.
Yeah, or a Jim even. So Jim's, Jim's got his feet up and he's going, oh, that will never work. We tried that back in 1972.
Yeah, and I've always found those guys really difficult because you come into an area where change has not been done, and when it is done, they want different change. And learning is working these people out and then trying to be agile about how to manage them, because I did exactly what you said. I did my whole stakeholder plan and whatever, but I treated them all the same. I said, right, I'll have 15 minutes a week with them and I'll talk to them, and I treated them all like the one that's very data driven. Which one was it? The one was it governance? Yeah. Thinking, let's be logical, they will get that. Whereas actually, you need to treat them very differently, don't you?
You do, and if
yeah.
they're triggered by your change as being a negative, they're not in a logical state. They're in an emotional
Exactly, yeah.
state. So there's no point. You're just
Don't
talking
treat
to a brick
people
wall.
aren't robots,
Yeah.
are they? They're not going to just
Yeah.
say, yeah, 1 plus 1 is 2. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So getting people into a logical state, and if there's more on that in the first video, so if you've not seen it, go and have a look at that, because that explains why that happens. Brilliant, thank you. Dan.
Yeah, so my biggest surprise was probably that obviously all those people exist, for one. And then also having thought about them and realised them is that you can have all of them in one meeting, which is another interesting meeting to have. But then my biggest learning would probably be to deal with each one specifically in a different way to sort of target those results that you like to get out of them.
And you just need the really difficult ones on board, and it will shift the others. So think about where you're going to start. The more time you spend understanding the key players in your project and shifting them in a positive way, it feels like a waste of time because you just want to get on and do. But if they're on board from the start, they'll be behind it. You're just swimming against with the tide rather than against it. So brilliant, thank you, Dan. Helen.
I think my surprise is that despite them all appearing as quite the negative Nelly group, they are also your dream team to deliver the change. They're the same group of people that will actually create the change. They just need some help to work out what part they play, because they all bring something, obviously, to the table, or they wouldn't be there in the first instance. They're just, their perception or perspective is just what needs changed, not them as individuals. So
absolutely spot on. What great thank you.
And my next steps, similar to the two Dans, is that racy, the inform, consult, account, responsible approach that you take when you're stakeholder mapping, and you kind of work out who you need to speak to. And there is some tailoring, of course, but I think the key thing for me was which does seem so really obvious when you say it out loud, is do they understand and do they agree? Because you'll have different people who will have different shades of that as well, that just need help with that. So that's my takeaway to consider differently.
Brilliant. And if you do that, name the person. So don't just write down HR, because it might be Kirsty and she's a good one. But there are plenty of people in HR that aren't. So who is it? Is it Kirsty that's not going to be on board, or is it, I don't want to name any names, somebody else that's going to be really difficult?
Yes,
because
I know her.
A different approach.
I know Kirsty from HR. I agree.
Brilliant. Thanks, Helen. Kirsty.
I think that the hopes and fears, it feels like it's just so easy to get people on board, because we get to find out their ambitions and their worries so quickly, Tammy. But also for me, listening to understand and using those really good coaching skills, questioning techniques is just going to reap the benefits. And what Helen said, I've put some names to some people and I've giggled as we've went through this exercise and went, oh, Jim's blah, oh, I know who Maya is. And just reminding me that I need to enter into every interaction with somebody like it's a new coaching client, finding out what would make it a win for them.
Yeah,
using that hope and fear. So I love that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. And they're photo dropping off now because I am running a bit over, but I still like to hear from everyone. Magda.
I really like that moment when you said we're all of the above. That was a surprise or realization that yes, I am myself all of the above. So that was really good. But I wonder, I don't know if you've covered that about, or whether in the aspect of like a toxic person, or somebody who says, a little bit twisted in the sense that they seem like they're on board, but they're actually telling everybody else that it's the wrong idea. Yeah. I don't know, what is that a type of a person, or is it just a trait that could be found in any of the above? But I mean, how to deal with that? If somebody says yes, but then actually they're not, they're undermining the change.
So they probably don't really understand the implications for them. So make sure they understand. Most people aren't toxic.
I know, but there are
But there are, and there are
They
just
do
some people
exist.
that are just bad people. But I try and think, okay, they've got stuff going on, they've got their own lives, they might be in a bad position at home. We don't know what people are bringing into work, so that can just help you be a little bit more compassionate about them. And just coaching. Ask some coaching questions just to find out. It will give you some pointers to what's really going on. If they are genuinely really toxic, then their time's probably limited. Yeah. But very few people are really toxic. Thank you. Nicola. Oh, you can't connect, so we can't get Nicola. And Tarsem.
For me, just the biggest surprise has been the number of different types there are. I didn't realize that. I thought there was a lot less. So that's quite an eye-opener for me. And what I've learned is now I've got some tools which I can use with some of these colleagues. And in fact, I've got a big meeting tomorrow with the big cheese. And he's a great boss, but I'd like to use some of these tools with him tomorrow.
Yeah. So again, even if they're a great boss, do the blind trust thing. I did that. You promised I would do that. I did that, because it would just give them subconsciously trust in what you do, and they'll leave you alone, which is what we want from our bosses until we need them. So we've all got some learning points. Hopes and fears. We had a fear that we didn't learn anything new, which we got rid of straight away. So I'm guessing that didn't come true. Always check in that the fears didn't happen at the end. Have we learned something new, been inspired, learned how to manage change a little bit differently, and got some new techniques?
We have.
You achieved your agenda. Well done. Always check in at the end with hopes and fears to make sure the fears didn't come true and you achieved your hopes, because people will trust the process. So if you do that a couple of times, people will do hopes and fears without even thinking. Thank you for coming. Sorry, I've run over ever so slightly. 2 weeks today, we've got strategic change versus system resistance. I can't remember where that title come from, but I'm sure it'll be fun and there'll be a joke in there. So hope to see you at the next one. And please do get in touch if you want any more help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good evening.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.